All right, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to a Wednesday. It is the Earthmaster here, June 12th, 2024. It's about 11:09 a.m. here, California time. Yes, I'm back here in California. Had a late night flight, didn't get back until about 2:30 in the morning, so I got a few hours of sleep here before I had to start the busy day. But all right, we're safely back here in California after a week in Texas. Latest earthquake here on the globe shows a 3.6 and a little cluster here. Let's bring the quakes back here to the normal 24-hour range, which is roughly about there. So we got a pretty good cluster of quakes here in the area just south of the Philippines, where they did see some further earthquake activity here this morning, close to a 6-pointer, with a 5.8 earthquake coming in there to the Philippines roughly about an hour or so ago. That's going to be 10 o'clock here my time, so it's 11 o'clock right now, so just about an hour ago. So we got a pretty decent swarm of activity stirring up here in this region after some eerily quiet conditions here over the past couple days. Some deeper activity here across the northern Mariana Trench and right around the Solomon Islands here. It looks like some deep activity stirring up from yesterday right on the plate boundary. Didn't get a chance to do a late night update last night because of that flight and, turning the rental car in and all that good stuff there at the airport and whatnot. Try to get there about 3 hours early, just in case, right? I'm always a prepper, so I need to make sure things are early. All right, so also we got a little swarming going on still here at Yellowstone. This kicked up yesterday. Got about 12 earthquakes or so within the vicinity there of Mount St. Helens. Not Yellowstone, but Mount St. Helens here. Yellowstone we'll check out here in a second. Not anything big, but let's check out the latest information here from the USGS. I do not wish to participate. Thank you. The volcano there currently at a green and normal. Earthquake swarms here been happening, seems like over the past few months or so, down there around 4 to 5 kilometers deep. And most of them have been underneath this area, underneath the summit area, but down there about 5 kilometers or so. I want to see if I can pull up a seismograph station here or two, see what we got. Some of the obviously earthquake activity going to be easy to spot here on the seismograph station as far as local activity goes. That's going to be these little spikes right here, maybe one up here, a couple more in the vicinity last night, a couple other small quakes here. So again, this has been a little ongoing deal here with earthquake activity. It doesn't look like they've kicked up the gas emission stations out here. They're still offline, still looking for a way to get some of this data coming in, but how are we supposed to monitor volcanic levels at the dome area, the summit area, if they're all offline? So that's a little odd, but we'll continue to watch that. So earthquake activity continues there around Mount St. Helens. Nothing big. Here's the last 30 days of earthquake activity. Obviously, we would be seeing further inflation, further earthquake activity leading up towards the surface, and of course, gas emissions would go off the chart, or at least be getting elevated there prior to any eruption, which I don't think is happening anytime soon. But obviously, any type of earthquake swarm around the volcano is something to watch. Got about 101 earthquakes here around the Mount St. Helens area, and as you can see, roughly the summit area to the north on the northern flank here, where it had popped back in the 80s. I believe it was the 80s. I don't know. I was a small kid back then, so I don't quite remember that. But and I looked at these GPS monitoring stations here, and they give us a good indicator of what's going on in terms of displacement and whatnot here across, not only volcanoes, but also subduction zones and whatnot. I'm really not seeing anything on the chart here that would tell me that we need to be worried. Everything, for the most part, there is on a decline, showing deflation over time. This is up vertical displacement, northward movement, and eastward movement here. And this is going up. There's little patterns here, right? There's little patterns each year. It goes up, seems to go up during various seasons here, but we're going, to me, it almost looks like we're just going down still. but on the vertical displacement right here. But still, these earthquakes are occurring down there between 4, looks like even a 6-kilometer deep one, 7 kilometers deep there. So it could be a sign here, maybe something starting to kick up in the future in terms of magma recharging down there in the areas where it would be expected to be seen. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. The rest of the volcanoes out here across the Cascades pretty quiet. And, you know, any geologist or whatnot you ask is going to say that earthquake swarms are common. And, you know, that right there is nothing to be concerned about at the moment. One little earthquake here, surface quake there around Shasta Lake, a little 1.9. Did see some further earthquake activity here in Northern California underneath this area, 18 kilometers deep for a 2.0. So on that note, the tremor map here from yesterday still shows, as you can see, 516 epicenters of tremor, mainly here on the southern end of the Cascadia, a little bit up here underneath this region of Oregon. It looks like it's this is underneath the area, about 45 kilometers deep. So a little bit of adjustment going on here across almost the central section here of the Cascadia. But the majority of these tremors, not volcanic tremors, but subduction zone tremors there. It's a low vibrational frequency that's picked up when two plates are slowly going past one another. And that's down there in the slippage zone, so to speak. And of course, when that occurs, you get further strain upstream, right? That's adding further increasing pressure on that giant spring out here, so to speak, in terms of accumulating enough strain and stress for the next mega quake out here in the Pacific Northwest. Over the past month here, let's see what we got. Looks like it began back on the 19th of May, coming up on a month's time period. Looks like we have been... Yesterday's event was a little bit higher, 516, so it does look like things are still going on. They're not declining. We're at almost 9,000 epicenters here in the Cascadia subduction zone, mostly on the southern end. Now, there's a little area up here outside of Seattle that does a little tremor event every 12 to 14 months, and we normally don't see that here on the southern end. Somebody asked me about that in one of my videos that I did here a year or so back when we were looking at elevated tremor up here. There's a sequence of events that take place up there every 12 to 14 months. And let me see if I can find it on the other tremor map here. They discuss it in their tremor research, the tremor overview. I'm not going to go into this, but they keep every single log here of what goes on and the reoccurrence intervals of these tremors that occur down into the subduction zone. But it's more focused up here, up into the Pacific Northwest. Let me see if they've posted anything out here. See, the latest is at the bottom. Let me see what we got. See, they focus mainly on the Pacific Northwest here and that 12 to 13 month interval of reoccurrence of tremor, and I believe that's only confined up there. There's a whole thing that goes on up here every 12 to 13 months, but even that in itself hasn't been common or normal. It's been acting a little weird here. If you look, yes, there's been average occurrences here. See these spikes? Those are elevated tremors. And I think if we go back to this time period, you'll see that the majority of these are probably up in the Pacific Northwest. Let's see what we got. Give it a second. Hopefully, there we go. 12,000 epicenters of tremor. A lot up here in the Pacific Northwest. I think that's where the concentration is. A little bit down here in Northern California as well. That's just one. If we check back a little bit older, most of the time when these events come up, the 12 to 13 month occurrence level, they're mainly up here across this area. But it does look like there has been some regions here in the south that's shown elevated tremor. But again, over the last couple weeks or coming up on the month, the majority of the tremor has been confined here south. Minimal up here into the Pacific Northwest. And there's really not a whole lot of huge days of elevated tremor. Like a couple of these days, we've seen 900, maybe over even 1,000 epicenters of tremor on any given day. Now, I don't know, it's if it matters that much in terms of whether we see tremor occur on a 1 to 2 day period on an elevated level, or if we see it occur over a span of a couple weeks or so, like we've been seeing. It's something of new in terms of scientific data and theories, but there's a lot that we don't know yet. I firmly believe that this activity that we see here, the tremor activity, does not release strain. It may be releasing strain down deep into the subduction zone, but the locked area up here, think about that. What's going on with the locked area? That's increasing strain up here. It would make sense, right? That's how you add strain at a subduction zone, is by the subduction of the plate. And when you get that tremor activity stirring up downstream there on large counts, it's got to be adding strain at the locked areas, the surface levels up here. And most of it has been here on the southern end. That's plainly visible, I think. Anyone can see this area right here showing the majority of the epicenter. So we're continuing to watch it. And, when I say it hasn't acted normal here, we haven't seen a large-scale tremor count since 2022, about October. See these spikes here? Those are those elevated reoccurrence levels that were common, that they could almost predict. But since then, it's acted weird. It's been awfully quiet in terms of daily count. But we'll watch it, right? That's all we can do right now. We're still seeing earthquake activity across the area of the southern end of the Cascadia. A little bit of crustal quakes going on up here across the Pacific Northwest. But it's these quakes that occur upstream from the tremor that's leading me to believe that there's impending larger pressure out here across the area due to this tremor. The majority of these quakes, look at this one right on the Cascadia, 4.3. About a week ago there, right on the Cascadia megathrust area. And all of these other quakes here on the southern end are upstream from the subduction zone tremor, 18, 14, 20 kilometers, 23, 28. Again, the tremor occurs further right here on the map, but underneath this area down into the subduction zone. What did I just do there? Down into the subduction zone slippage area. 35, 45 kilometers deep here in this area. We'll continue to watch that. All right, let's get back to further activity here in California. Bay Area had a little earthquake up here late last night near the San Pablo area, 2.4. Looks like it's on the northern edge here, the Hayward Fault. That's been quite active here as well over the past couple weeks. But this one looks like it's a little bit further north than the previous activity. Southern California, spotty activity at best here. We got one earthquake here in the hazard zone. This is on the North American side of the plate boundary, right there where the stress is probably quite greatest here, quite the greatest along this plate boundary here. Been watching this area pretty closely. They've been getting a little bit of swarming, and of course we've seen swarms all over the place here in Southern California over the past 3 weeks, I would say. But when I see activity right here on this side, that tells me things are getting hot out here on the plate boundary. That's a 3.4, almost 5 kilometers deep. Does look like we've seen a little aftershock there, 1.0 in that area. So, there's California in general is just a unfortunately a disaster waiting to happen. I live out here myself, so got to be prepared, right? Pacific or the Utah area, handful of quakes up here across this mountain range. Don't think we've seen anything big out here. A couple 2s, couple 1s. Yellowstone National Park up here, one little earthquake, a little 0.8 this morning. But let me double check that. I'm going to leave this page here for you guys to read in the update video. It's just interesting to read the tremor research and whatnot, and it explains a lot. If I try to explain it, it'd be a couple hour long video maybe. I don't want to do that. But let's go back here to the Yellowstone seismographs here, see what we got. Looks like we got more wind stirring up here right now. Notice that in the last couple hours on the chart. This was yesterday. When these thunderstorms and whatnot brew up and the wind picks up in the afternoon, that's what it looks like right here. We've seen it time and time. This is a little earthquake, maybe a little spike here and there, but aside from that, that is wind. And a way to find out is to just verify, right? Verification is something geologists and scientists and I think everyone would want to know about, right? Whether this is wind or whether it's something else. So we go over here to the wind. I like to use the wind gust because that gives me a good idea of where things could really be kicking up. And as you can see there across Yellowstone National Park, I'm sure we got more areas higher than 33 miles per hour or so. Over to the west, 40 miles per hour. Or to the east, excuse me. I've been all directionally messed up being a week out in Texas here. I'm used to being out here in Northern California, and it's weird. I was down here on the Gulf for a little bit. Then we went up here to chase some storms last couple days. But it was busy. Seen fighter jets flying over the Gulf here. We were just outside of Lake Jackson down here. A little beautiful area called Surfside Beach, Texas. And that place was packed on the weekend. It almost looked like a Florida beach. No sharks. Didn't see any didn't feel any jellyfish. But seen fighter jets. There was at least 2 of them on the weekends. There'd be one flying really low. I would probably say about 2,000 feet above and just zooming by. And then there'd be another one, and then they'd come back a little bit later. I think they were doing some type of patrol out here across the Gulf Coast area due to some political stuff here that I really don't like to discuss on this channel. But it's pretty neat to see the fighter jets going overhead while I was out swimming in the Gulf. All right, let's get back to the activity here, see what else we got. Speaking of Texas, oil fields galore. Seen quite a few of those while I was out here traveling. A lot of earthquake activity occurring out in those oil fields as well. New Madrid seismic zone in the eastern portion of the country, quiet. Out here across the northern East Pacific Rise, seen this earthquake coming in when I was at the airport. It does look like we did see a little bit of adjustment across the Guatemala area. This type of activity out here on these fracture zones tend to add strain up against the subduction zones here of the Middle America Trench. And it does look like we're seeing a little bit of activity following that movement yesterday. Literally about 40 minutes, not even that, about 35 minutes, almost immediately following that earthquake out here in this fracture zone. And really, that should amplify conditions out here across the Caribbean plate as well. Did see a little bit of movement out here in Puerto Rico today, some 3s. It looks like nothing big for now. The big island of Hawaii. What do we got going on out here? Any major changes? Doesn't look like it. But I do want to double check and see. Let's go back here to the volcano hazard site. And still sitting at a yellow in advisory out here. Nothing new, doesn't look like. I didn't get a chance to check out the deformation data, so I'm kind of curious to see what's going on out here. Still going up, right? Is this today's 610 to 612? Yeah, that is right. Well, check that out. We're at our level now, seen just prior to the most recent eruption here, back on the 2nd or 3rd of June. There in the southwest rift zone. So it'll be interesting to see what takes place here following this. Look at it. It's just going up and up and up. There's no deflationary event similar to what we've seen in previous events leading up to the eruption. We'd see, inflation and then level off a little bit, followed by at least a day or two of deflation and then back up. But this one, look at that. There's no stopping it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens, whether we're going to see a displacement of magma or a new eruption there across one of the rift zones. The latest update here was put out yesterday. Doesn't really mention anything. They just talked about the new deformation and whatnot could result in new eruptive episodes within the area or somewhere else. I mean, it's just, who knows, right? It'll be interesting to watch. And the key to watching that, of course, is going to be earthquake activity. See where maybe this pressure is building out here. Let me see what we got last 7 days. Have noticed some decent pressure down here, a little bit further south. This is where that magma intrusion took place back in, was it February or March? We seen a high level of inflation at the summit, followed by a magma intrusion off here to the southwest rift zone. But it kept going further south here, out towards this area, and that's where we've been seeing elevated earthquake activity. The Pahala swarm, that's very typical. I'm not really concerned about that because this is just an ongoing event, but also some activity out here across the east rift zone and the Helens slump area, the northern edge. So it's a waiting game. Watch, wait, and see, right? Alaska area, handful of earthquakes up here. Doesn't look like anything major going on. I'm trying to adjust back to that California air. It's crazy. A little bit of swarming going on here across this area of, which volcano is that? Let me see here. I think that's the Great Sitkin volcano, right? Which is still at an orange. Page not found. There we go. Looks like they haven't updated the links here. But a little bit of swarming out here around this volcano, 10, 5, 6 kilometers deep or so. Let's see, there's some of our deeper activity on the northern Mariana Trench and up north here. That's pretty shallow, though, 4.3 from yesterday. This one's somewhat deep there into the northern edge of the Japan Trench. Taiwan did see a little bit of activity stirring up yesterday, but really no major swarming. New Zealand area down here, looks like Kermadec Trench, southern end of it, showing some deeper activity. So the watchful eye today will probably be on areas where we're seeing the elevated movement, and in between here in the deeper activity. Could be looking at Papua New Guinea region, seeing some earthquake activity stirring up throughout the day today. Mediterranean, handful of smaller quakes out there. North of Iceland, seeing a little bit of swarming up there at the top of the globe. Let's check out Iceland here. It's good to be back. There's no place like home, right? I don't know if, people travel much out here, my viewers, but it's draining. To get some R&R, it's draining in itself. I'm not even joking. The views out here are not visible. Looks like another cloudy day out there in the Iceland area. As far as earthquake activity goes across this area, make sure everything is good. Looks like we're good. All right. Not much. About 36 earthquakes across various areas of the rift boundaries, rift zones out here. Really not seeing anything of abnormal activity. The latest from the Icelandic Met Office, we'll check this out here real quick, shows an update from yesterday talking about pollution. Well, the volcanic gases, that is. It is undesirable to do outdoor activities in the areas where pollution is measured. You can monitor the air quality here. So they're stating that land rise has started again. Lava still collects in a lava pond just southeast of the Slingerfell region. Lava is still accumulating in a lava pond just southeast of Slingerfell, which could empty again and trigger another eruption in the coming days. So here's our... Oh, there it is. I can see it already. Let me go over here to the Svartsengi data. I think this is it. And, well, this is one of them. Which model are they using here? They're using this region right here, it looks like. But here's when the eruption popped. Obviously, deflation occurring following that eruption there at Iceland. But we are starting to go back up. It looks like they're in the last couple runs. I like to monitor the data around the Grindavik area. It's a little key area to watch. And it doesn't look... I mean, yeah. Here's the eruption going down. Looks like we leveled off, and now we're starting to come back up a little bit with some of these runs. So, yeah, this may turn into another, long run eruption. followed by maybe a pause and then another eruption. It's starting to look very similar to what we've seen last time, but not quite as intense. During the last eruption here, we see nothing but inflation during the eruption. This one's a little weaker, but we'll continue to watch that. All right, space weather activity. It looks like we got some proton events coming in here. Why? Why is that? Something. Yeah, right? It looks like Kevin's kind of wondering as well. Based on imagery by the SDO, something exploded behind the western limb, which would be over here, far western limb. I think that's from 3697, right? That's that source of mini X flares. The big-time sunspot, which came around the sun a couple times, is not now back on the far side of the sun. It did produce a massive full halo CME that is directed away from Earth. Protons, though, blasted away from the sun following this event, are still finding their way past Earth. But the levels currently sit just below the minor S1 radiation storm. And, of course, I think the only source over there is 3697. It's got to be. So we are seeing a little bit of proton events right now from that explosion. This is directed away from Earth, so there's going to be no aurora activity. Had this been facing Earth, yeah, we'd probably see a decent aurora event here with that full halo CME. But nothing in the forecast. Right now, Earth-facing side, unfortunately, it's going to be a little quiet. Let me check out the data here real quick. Are we working? What's going on? Hello? I shouldn't take that long. Was this one working? Looks like it is, but it only goes back a little time. I wanted to see what happened over here. Little flaring going on, but that's from. Keep an eye over here. Recent. Looks like we've barely seen it right there at the end, right here around this area. See that little, and this sunspot is so far over there now that we can't even, we can't really see what's going on even in the UV filter ray. But it did produce, again, this massive full halo CME from the SDO imagery. And we're left with, folks, not a whole lot of interesting sunspots out here, unfortunately. I mentioned it in the past couple updates that we're probably going to be entering into a little quiet period. This region, I guess if you did twist my arm and I had to choose something here in terms of what to watch, maybe this area right here shows something. Shown a little bit of complexity and maybe a little bit of growth in there as well, but that's about it. Everything else looks fairly calm, and the overall threat is continuing to diminish. 99% chance for a C flare. This is the Earth-facing side. This does not count for far side activity. M flare at 25, X flare around 10% chance, and there's a proton event there from today's explosion on the far side. Protons, pretty crazy. And the far side of the sun over here, if we look, there's 3697 over there. It's continuing to drift off further across the western limb. Here it is on this image. This is the eastern limb. This is what's coming around the Earth-facing side of the sun here in the days and weeks ahead. And there's not a whole lot. I don't see anything comparable to any of the sunspots that we've seen recently. That's why I say it's probably going to be a little quiet in terms of solar flare activity. All right, Storm Prediction Center got some movement or some activity way up north here with an enhanced risk, 5% chance for tornadoes and 2% surrounding that today. That includes Duluth, Minnesota, Superior, Wisconsin. These areas up here need to be on guard for some severe weather. It looks like some hail up there as well. Getting into that time of year where things are starting to shift to the north. But let's see, what do we got here? Day 2? Is there nothing? No, there is, but something's going on here. It's weird. We're still good. Little tornado, but mostly wind and hail threats there for the day on Thursday. Tomorrow. For Friday, shifts back here to the Central Plains area. We'll have to keep an eye on that. We'll check that out as we get a little bit closer there, folks. Seismographs look pretty quiet. Overall activity, moderate in terms of earthquake movement. A deeper activity, though, is a sign of things getting ready to shift out here. And as you can see, around here across the Solomon Islands, north here in the Mariana Trench, watch this area right around here for some movement today. There's a little bit of swarming going on south of the Philippines, and this area right here leaves a little seismic gap here for some filling in maybe today. Aside from that, folks, I'm glad to be back. Got a lot of stuff to do. Got a week's worth of yard work to do here, it looks like. Left a garden. I got a pretty decent garden going on here. I'll have to upload a video a little bit later. And my sister came over and took care of it, so I appreciate that. Taking care of some household stuff. But the garden took off like crazy. It's loving the 108 degree temperatures out here. Me, not so much. But the garden, yes, likes the sun and it likes the heat. But that's not going to last for too long, thankfully. We are supposed to be again up around 107, 108 or so outside of my area here in Northern California. And after that, things cool down a little bit. Back into the low 90s. While this area cooks, supposed to be some type of heat dome going on here for the folks that live out here. We'll cover that a little bit later on this evening, folks. In the meantime, have a good day. We'll see you guys a little bit later on this evening. Take care, folks.